Hi, this is Mother Murderer Podcaster, a show about the most outrageous and the best made for TV movies of the 80s and 90s.
Hi, I'm Katie Madonna Lee, a filmmaker.
And I'm Lewis Jordan, a writer.
I love TV movies. They're a big part of my work.
And I'm new to TV movies, but I'm really excited to learn about them. And this one, this week is our Halloween episode, and we're covering the 1985 ABC made-for-TV movie, The Midnight Hour, starring Lee Montgomery, Shari Belafonte, LeVar Burton, Peter DeLuise, Deedee Pfeiffer, and Jonna Lee. Now, The Midnight Hour is one I had never heard of this before, but Katie, you love this movie. This is like a cult classic that you've introduced to me. It's a horror comedy romance musical that is basically what would happen if Michael Jackson's Thriller was 90 minutes long. It's incredibly Halloweeny. It's technically a horror movie, but it's not really. It's not bloody. It's more spooky than scary, but it's very Halloweeny. And it's not on DVD because it has all of these great songs from the 60s and they couldn't get the music rights. So you can only find it on YouTube. But yeah, it's this very like spooky and campy and sweet and romantic and like very, very nostalgic movie for Halloween. So I thought I'll give a little summary of the plot, and then we can talk about the movie and your memories of the movie and like, how it affected you and all of that stuff. And then I thought it would be interesting to sort of talk a little bit about nostalgia and like what makes you feel nostalgic about that movie and what like made me feel nostalgic because I felt nostalgic and I'd never even seen it before. So anyway, the plot summary to The Midnight Hour. It's Halloween in Pitchford Cove, Massachusetts, which is a sleepy Salem-like New England town. And Phil Grenville, who's played by Lee Montgomery, is a sweet and shy teenager who happens to be the great, 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 great grandson of Nathaniel Grenville, who was a witch hunter who saved the town about 300 years ago from Lucinda Cavander. It's a great name. The witch who put a curse on the town. And Lucinda's great, 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 great granddaughter is Phil's friend Melissa, played by Shari Belafonte, Harry Belafonte's daughter. And their friend group includes Mary, Deedee Pfeiffer, who is Michelle's sister, who Phil desperately wants to ask to the big Halloween party that night. And Melissa's boyfriend is Vinny, played by LeVar Burton, who's a transplant from NYC, and the football player Mitch, who's the son of the town's judge. And he is played by Peter DeLuise. And these five friends are preparing for the big Halloween party when Mitch gets an idea to break into the local history museum and borrow the original clothes of the witch and the witch hunter to use as costumes. And so they find a trunk that belongs to Nathaniel Grenville, and it has a scroll written in blood by Lucinda Cavander on human skin. So, of course, Melissa, Lucinda's descendant, decides that it would be a really good idea to read that scroll aloud in the middle of a graveyard on Halloween night. What could go wrong? So then after they leave the graveyard, the earth starts to move and zombies and werewolves and vampires and all of the demons of hell come to life in this very thriller-like kind of scene. So zombies start to wander around the town, but it's Halloween, so everybody just thinks that they're in costume. And on the way to the party, Phil meets Sandy, Jonna Lee, who's a cute blonde girl in a 50s cheerleader outfit. And they're immediately attracted to each other. He doesn't realize that she's actually a well-preserved zombie who died in 1959, who came back to life because she died before she could fall in love. And so at the party, everybody's having fun. Phil can't get Mary to notice him, so he ditches the party to go home. And at the same time, Melissa is cornered by her ancestor, Lucinda, who bites Melissa in this, who's now a vampire. For some reason, she was a witch, now she's a vampire. And she bites Melissa's neck in this very cool slow-mo scene where like geysers of red wine erupt in this wine cellar instead of blood. And How Soon Is Now by the Smiths plays in the background. And so Phil and Sandy are reunited and they have this romantic evening riding around in Phil's car, falling in love to 50s and 60s oldies on the radio. But unbeknownst to them, the town is being massacred by monsters at the same time. And Melissa turns Vinny and Mary and Mitch and everybody else at the party into vampires. And then they all do a big thriller-style musical number called Get Dead. That's like a lot. It's super cheesy and it's a lot of fun. And then Phil and Sandy's romantic evening is interrupted by a werewolf. And at this point, almost the entire town has been changed. So Sandy admits she knows what's happening. And the way to break the curse is that they have to seal the scroll that they had read from before using wax mixed with Nathaniel Cavander's bones and pressed by his ring. And they have to do it before midnight. So, and then they can reverse all of this and everyone who's been killed will come back and everyone who's been turned into a monster will come back. So Phil and Sandy face down the party full of vampires to get Nathaniel's ring from Mitch. And then they go to the graveyard to get dust from Nathaniel's bones. And then they're trapped in Phil's car and they're trying to seal the scroll. And there's an entire town full of zombies that's surrounding them, trying to get inside. The spell isn't working and it looks like all is lost for our heroes. And then Sandy tells Phil that she loves him. And instantly all of the undead creatures disappear, including Sandy. And Phil begins to drive back to the city alone when a song dedication comes on the radio. And it's Barbara Lewis's Baby I'm Yours, dedicated from Sandy to Phil. And you're a stronger person than I am if you don't get teary at the end. So first I wanted to, talk a little bit about what makes this movie special. Because just listening to the plot doesn't really sell it in the way that you could be selling it. Like the plot sounds kind of cliched, but it's not what they're telling. It's the way that they tell it, sort of thing. So, Katie, what do you think makes this movie so damn charming?
Well, it's a slow burn and it sneaks up on you. But I really enjoy how there is so much nuance in this film. There's a lot of humor. For instance, there is a zombie who has incredible makeup, and he is enjoying himself. He's a mess. He's pretty much the slapstick zombie.
The one at the party who's
the one at the party.
Yeah,
he's also reading a newspaper, walking through town reading a newspaper, totally confused.
Yeah.
And then they have a couple zombies making out, and that's funny. They have this little person who's a zombie who sticks his head into the punch. That's just really funny. He's got there is just a lot of really good methods of storytelling, such as Vernon Nestor. He is a he's a zombie character, and even on his grave, they let you know. For instance, like Peter DeLuise's dad is a judge, and right away, the way they introduce him is he's a jerk. You don't like him. He's really loud. He's pretty unloving. He's a kind of a violent man, and he's the judge who obviously sentenced Vernon Nestor, this killer, to death. And Vernon Nestor rises from the grave and shows up at Kevin McCarthy, who is in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He's a famous actor.
And he's the guy who slapped around Joan Collins in Making of a Male Model.
Yes, yes. Oh my God, a repeat actor. And Vernon Nestor saying guilty, guilty, and the way they show that, it's a really good little, like, just a little touch of great storytelling there, because they showed that he was the judge, and they showed on the tombstone it said killer monster. Someone spray painted it in red. So they're telling us already this is a bad person. When he was raising, they told a lot of stories with the tombstones. They showed a lot. Everything was set up really well. There's a lot of detail in the story. A lot of things that are not in the plot summary that are in the story. So there's a lot of really good storytelling happening in the film altogether.
Yeah.
Just the camera work, the subtlety, one of my favorite parts that is just so random was the opera singer. That's how they
I was going to bring that up. It's that aria from Pagliacci, the famous one.
Yeah. And it's just so random that, and it was something very unique to this film, and a great use of sound design in the piece. And because it's when they have to drive through the town of zombies, and all of the zombies, basically everyone has become a zombie or a monster, or a werewolf or a vampire at this point. And they're driving through slowly. It's this very cryptic moment. And the cop, who's played by Red from that 70s show, who earlier was like, there's no zombies around here, is a zombie. They go by him, and he's like looking right at them.
My favorite part of that sequence is the zombie milkman on top of his milk truck pouring milk off of the milk truck with like red mist behind him. And there's no plot reason for this, but it's such a great image. And that section reminded me a little bit of the section in Night of the Comet, when we're going through the town and we see that everyone's been turned to dust.
Yes.
Where this genre movie takes a moment and just gives us these beautiful, creepy visuals, and really like gives us this strange, beautiful, and unsettling moment, rather than just barreling ahead with action. I thought it was interesting. I was looking at reviews and things that people had said, and I was looking on Letterboxd, that where people write their film reviews, and one guy said this film is like if Richard Linklater directed The Monster Squad, and then another one said it's like if Fred Dekker made Hocus Pocus. But I get that thing because it's got that sense of adventure and nostalgia that The Monster Squad does, but it's got this like specificity of character that I think they're thinking of like Dazed and Confused or something like that.
An ensemble picture.
Yeah, it's an ensemble picture, and it's coming of age, and it's got each of the characters, even if they're written sort of as cliches, they're like all kind of really individual and well defined by the actors. And yeah, I thought that there were these little moments, like something that really impressed me was at the beginning we get this very clunky exposition about how what happened in the past with Nathaniel, Grenville and blah, 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 blah. But they give it to Phil, the lead, and they make it his school report. And he has to give this report. So instead of it being all about this clunky exposition, it's like, oh, he's nervous to give this report and his friends are giving him a hard time and they're dropping books and he's like, he's nervous. And then then he talks about Melissa and then she gets embarrassed. And it's like, we're seeing the way that everybody relates to each other.
Yeah.
And it's and we're getting so much information about these other things that we almost forget that we're directly being fed exposition. And I was like, that's so smart. That's such a smart choice. And I think it's like, it's got this light tone where it can sort of veer from like being totally campy and totally like, goofy comedy to being very sweet to being creepy. And for some reason, it all just kind of flows together and it doesn't feel like it's coming from different movies. Yeah, I was just like, oh, the people who what tipped me off that the people who made this knew what they were doing was the very first shot, because it's a shot of the intersection. It's Maple and Elm. And I was like, oh, Nightmare on Elm Street and The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street from The Twilight Zone. I was like, these are people who know their horror. Okay, I'm in good hands.
Yeah. And what else I love about this movie is everybody has a purpose. Every character, even Wolfman Jack, who could have just been there, oh, he's just fun, but no, at the end they needed him to say for the big, this is a song dedicated from Sandy after, like she called from the grave to, and Wolfman Jack delivered that message. So everything had a purpose even up until the end. And there's no wasted camera space. Like everything on here, like the production design is excellent. One of my favorite production designs from the film is the coffin full of popcorn at the Halloween party. There's like a black cardboard coffin with like a skeleton in it. It has filled with yellow popcorn, and that goofy zombie, like the slapstick zombie's like, this popcorn's great, like he's eating it. Little touches like that really this made the film just everything so layered. It was like
or like
you just kept opening. There's a lot.
Yeah. Or like hey Lola.
Hi Kat.
Or how I also Phil is dressed up as a zombie, but like a new wave zombie, and he's got this tinsel wig. And at first he's like really excited about his costume, and then as the night goes on, he's like, oh, this wig really itches. And he's getting less and less like enthusiastic about the night because it's not turning out well. And I was just like, oh my God, that's so exactly what happens with costumes. You're like, this looks amazing, and then you're like, oh God, but it really itches and hurts, and this isn't fun anymore. And I was like, that's such a great detail, and it works perfectly with the character, and it's this specific little thing. They've often got like multiple things going on at once. There's one level and then there's another level happening, and this is literally a movie where they all burst into a pop song called Get Dead and like do a big choreographed musical number out of nowhere. Nobody's done that before in this movie. So it's like, I don't want to oversell it as like, this is a great drama, but it's like you go in expecting it to just be completely silly, kind of, horror trash. And then you're like, oh no, it like you said, it sneaks up on you.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself kind of caring about the characters. And then by the end, you're like really into it. I knew that I was probably going to like it, but it took me a minute watching it to like get my bearings with it, and then once I got it, then I was like, oh, this is great. Like it hit me, and I was like, oh, of course, Katie's not going to recommend something just because she saw it when she was a kid, and it has that resonance. Yeah, you have that objectivity. You know what goes into making a good film.
Yeah, because I didn't recommend the Garbage Pail Kids. So, I saw when I was little, and now I'm like, oh my god. No.
Yeah.
Or the Hug-a-Bunch movie. Mac and Me. These are all. No, these are not things I'm gonna ever tell you should see.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and then another thing that's really good about this movie is the score,
Yeah,
which
the score was by Brad Fiedel, who this was one of his early TV movie works. He went on to he's very famous for doing the music for the Terminator T2. And yeah, he did the film score for this, which I think is really has a wonderful tone and sensibility to it. Like it's sweet, wholesome, and spooky.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was definitely, out of all of the movies that we've covered so far, I think it was like the least cheesy. There was no moment where, like in other ones, like in False Arrest, I was like, oh, this score is pretty good. And then they would have a moment where it was supposed to be dramatic, and then there would be like a guitar going like, but this was just, like if you told me that this was a theatrical movie, I would believe you. I don't get TV movie from it. I don't get anything where it's like, oh, it's lesser in some area of production.
Yeah, and I think maybe they had a bigger budget because it was a Halloween special, even though it was on November 1st instead of Halloween night.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah.
And then the soundtrack, I think, is really interesting because it's set in 1985, and the Get Dead musical number is like an 80s musical thing, but they're all, apparently, I guess it's like they're doing like an oldies weekend with the local radio station, and Wolfman Jack is hosting it, but it's all 60s music, like late 50s and 60s music, where they're like listening to Wilson Pickett singing, I'm gonna wait till the midnight hour. And I was like, it's that 60s, 80s hybrid, like Dirty Dancing,
Yeah.
where like they're in the 60s, but then all of a sudden it's like, I've had the time of my life, and there's nothing 60s about, or Hungry Eyes or something like that. And it's just this 80s song there in the 60s. And that was like a thing in the 80s, where you would have these like just total hybrids of
Music. Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like it was done successfully well in Dirty Dancing, because there's other movies like Teen Wolf 2 where that didn't work so well.
Yeah.
The hybrid.
Yeah. Back
Stand
to
by
the Future
Me,
too. Back to the Future also, that's very much like they've got that is, it's a little bit, that has like period appropriate music for the different periods, but like it's like this 50s 80s like blend where you're getting hit.
Very true. Stand by Me, that film, was definitely, talk about reminiscing. Yeah, that is definitely nostalgic. film. And I'd say that was completely, they didn't do like a 80s. I feel like that didn't have any 80s music in it besides the pure film score, which was mostly different versions of Stand By Me arranged.
I have a whole, when we're talking about nostalgia later, I'll get into it. I have this whole sort of idea about like the like the 80s 60s hybrids
We can talk
and
about
all
that now.
Okay, yeah. Well, I thought because in one way it's like okay, we're going to appeal to the youth, but then we're also going to appeal to their parents by having the stuff in the 80s but then having the stuff in the 60s. But then I also thought there's this other level of it because when we're kids, we a lot of times listen to the music that our parents are listening to. And
Yes.
then we have nostalgic associations with that. So when we're hearing, because specifically they're focusing on, like 60s music. So I think a lot of people who were, like 10 or 12 or whatever in 1985, who were like a good age to be seeing this, would have grown up hearing their parents playing music from the 60s from when they were kids and have like warm nostalgic associations with that. So it's like, it's like you're hitting them with a double whammy. That's why these double whammy nostalgia films can be really potent, because it's not just the parents and the kids, but like it's hitting the kids on two different levels.
Well, definitely. I mean, everyone who knows me knows I'm obsessed with Stand By Me. That's been like that forever. And like I saw that when I was 6, and it is interesting because it is like a film for my parents. Like, remember when, you were growing up in the late 50s, early 60s, and you went to go find a dead body? I don't know. And here, I mean, first of all, when I was growing up, that was during the huge Nick at Night era where they would play reruns of like 50s shows like Donna Reed and Leave It to Beaver. And from watching those shows, like my favorite show back then was the Donna Reed show and Mr. Ed. And My Three Sons. I really love those shows. I was obsessed with, and Dobie Gillis. I would watch Dobie Gillis, the Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, and I wanted to live in that era. I was nostalgic for it. I was like, oh my God, everything was better then. I mean, I would drive my parents crazy. Like, wasn't it so good then? Wasn't it better? Oh, I miss the dresses. I love the cars. I want to go to the malt shop. And like my dad would like take me around town, and there were only like two malt shops around from that era, and now there's none. There's nothing, obviously. I really was nostalgic for that, for something I didn't even experience, and that was already, I mean, I was 6 years old, and I was like, I was 6 and I was like, no, I want to live in 1958. This sucks. I like Elvis. I like malt shops. I want everything to be in black and white. I want saddle shoes, and I was very like, I mean, and then Madonna came out with, True Blue in 1986, and that was very 50s themed girl group type song, and Dirty Dancing came out. So very much I was already feeling nostalgic for these things that I missed out on, that I never was raised with. And so it culturally fit. Like I can only imagine like 20 years from now, 30 years from now, hearing people that are 6 years old during Stranger Things in this 80s kind of like explosion, that maybe they're going to be like, what? Oh, I watched Stranger Things and I was so nostalgic for the 80s. And I was like, well, I was too, because I'm sorry, it was way better. Like, than it is now. It was better in the 80s than it is now. Like,
Stranger Things is a perfect example, because you've got that double whammy, where it's like you've got Gen X people who are watching it who are like, oh my God. And it's filled with references from, like, Steven Spielberg, but like John Carpenter and, all of these, it's just like jam packed full of, but like Star Wars, but also, The Thing, but also Firestarter, but also, but then like Gen Z people who, grew up like having that stuff around because their parents loved that, then that's resonating with them too. So they're loving it. So it's like, it's hitting people on multiple levels. But yeah, it's very, it's very nostalgic. And that whole thing about, because it's built into this piece because of Sandy, and Sandy being, this relic from the late 50s, early 60s. But she keeps going around the town saying, oh, let's go to the malt shop. Yeah. And then the malt shop's not there. And like, let's go out to Makeout Point, and nobody's there at Makeout Point. And it's just, she keeps trying to relive her past and do the things that she never got to do. And it's like she's returned home, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And it's very much that sort of nostalgic impulse where you're like, oh, I want to feel that way again, but then time has passed and you can't really. But then she does end up getting to do the thing that she wanted to do, which is fall in love. So,
and Lee Montgomery, meow. Yes.
He is, it's so funny because like in Girls Just Want to Have Fun, he's like the hot guy.
He is
the hot guy, and he can dance. And then in this, he's like this dorky guy with glasses, and he's literally the male version of like the She's All That girl, where it's like, she takes off her glasses and like pulls down her hair, and it's like, you're beautiful. He's the male version
shallow.
of that.
It's always like, here, speaking of.
Yeah, exactly. Like, wow, Peggy Sue, you're beautiful.
No, I'm dumb. Like, smart. Smart. I'm stupid and dorky. Oh, geez. It's like the equivalent of me having dark hair.
Yeah.
Like,
Also, he had a lot of, I was like, this teenager has a lot of chest hair.
Yeah, he had a lot of arm hair. I noticed that. I was like, Wolfman.
Yeah. Because
I was like, very foxy. He's very, like when I was little. Okay, just to be clear, I saw this when I was about 10, because 10 or 11, or maybe 12. I was in that tween era, and I did not see it when it first came out. I saw it when I stayed home from school because I hated school so much, and my mom would let me skip school because she knew how much I hated it. I don't even know why I went, honestly, because I missed so much. But I remember I would watch Lifetime TV movies all day, and I would listen. I would write songs, I would do aerobics, and I would watch TV movies all day. So
amazing.
Literally, I'm still doing all those things. That's what I do.
Nothing has changed.
Take that, you mean old Catholic meanies. Anyway, so I would watch these Lifetime movies, and usually they were all really intense. Like I watched Shattered Innocence, the other one with the actress who
Jonna
plays
Lee.
Sandy. Like I'd watch stuff like that. So this came on like at 1 p.m. or like 2 p.m. one day on Lifetime, and I was like, and it wasn't like Halloween either. It was like summer. It was like spring, and I remember like when it ended, I was like, well, first of all, I was like crying so hard. I was crying so hard, but I was like, this is the kind of movie that that literally took me out of my present day reality, where when a regular TV movie couldn't, or even when a regular movie couldn't. That really was compelling. I was never bored. I was so interested in it, and on so many levels I didn't understand until now, until we're talking about like the nostalgic things, like all the things I loved when I was real little, like Grease. You know, her name's Sandy.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, she's a cheerleader, you know,
Hmm.
and I related to that character so much because, you know, I didn't really relate to my surroundings growing up. I just kind of always longed for something. I always felt like I was missing out on something, like I just wasn't in the right place.
Yeah.
And so when Sandy was walking around, I was like, well, first of all, she was the girl I always wanted to be, you know, the pretty blonde girl, the cheerleader, you know, and innocent, sweet, romantic, and but that scene where she's looking for her house and she goes up and she's like, "No, my house, it has a picket fence, it's small," and all the stuff she's trying to do, like that's how I felt because I was always trying to, you know, I was like, I want to go to the malt shop, I want to go to the, you know, I want to go to the sock cop, I want to do this, I had this very idealized thing of the past. Apparently, my parents were like,
Hmm.
just sort of like, what are you talking about? Like, like what is happening? I think that's why my
Hmm.
dad had me watch Full Metal Jacket after I was like talking about how I wanted to go back to the 50s. Showed me all the Vietnam movies of the 80s, like Platoon and Full Metal Jacket. Like, no, you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
what happens.
Well, and because I think that's one of the essential characteristics of a nostalgic movie. I mean, there's multiple ways that we can engage with nostalgia. There is in that way. I think nostalgia is a little bit like camp, where there's pure camp, where they did not intend it, and it's just the way that you see it that makes it camp, where you're like, oh my god, this is so campy, I can't believe they didn't realize how funny this is. And that's the sort of nostalgia where it's like, oh my god, I have such vivid memories of sitting on the couch and watching this as a child, and and feeling so happy. And but then there's also, in the way that there can be movies that are intentionally campy, that are like performing camp.
Yeah.
There are things that are nostalgic in a self-aware way, and we see a lot of that right now in movies, where it's films that are remakes, that have callbacks or reimaginings, and it's the new Star Wars or the new A League of Their Own, or
Cobra
whatever.
Kai.
Yeah, Cobra Kai, exactly. That's a perfect example where
I love Johnny
it's
Lawrence. I just
it.
want to say that. I've always stood by him. I want to make this clear. Sorry.
Oh
I didn't
yeah,
mean to
yeah,
interrupt
yeah.
you.
No, that's okay.
But
Um, it-
I just want my ex-boyfriend from New York City who's listening to this to know
mhm.
that he was stupid for not letting me get that Johnny Lawrence poster I wanted in 2010 because I knew. I called it.
Mhm.
And I just want you to know that poster is sold out and I can't get it because I listened to your stupid ass. Okay, sorry. That's all I had to say about that.
But that's a perfect example of the sort of intentional. Um, we've got a lot of that around, but you can't make people nostalgic about just anything. Like, you can't make people nostalgic about Full Metal Jacket. People are
No.
not going to, because I think to make somebody feel nostalgic about something, whether it's the pure kind or the self-aware kind, there needs to be a feeling of like, I want to go there. That's
Yeah.
I want to be there, and it's a certain romantic way of presenting itself, and where it's like fun. There's fun and adventure, and it's romantic and sort of idealized and beautiful, and just something where you're like, I want to go there. And
Yeah.
that's why, things like Star Wars, have such a strong nostalgic pull, because everybody wanted to insert themselves into that world, to go into that world.
Yeah.
So I think that's why, like, I don't want to live in like the movie Halloween, the John Carpenter movie Halloween. You know, I I don't want to. I don't see Jamie Lee Curtis in that, and I'm like, oh, if only I could be terrorized in some suburban neighborhood. And these people are being terrorized in a suburban neighborhood, but it's so light and fun and full of adventure and sort of low stakes that it's just exciting, and it's not deeply upsetting and terrifying.
And the same
that
goes for Night of the Comet. For
yeah.
me, like Night of the Comet's like one of those movies you see and you're like, oh, I want to go there. That's so fun. Speaking of, I was gonna wear my Rebels cheerleading top, but I can't find it. I don't know where it is, and so I couldn't. I said
You've got a very sort of 50s thing going on, definitely. So getting back to the movie, something that we have to address is that this is literally Thriller the movie.
It is, and I love that. I love it. I love that they did that because most of the time, one of my favorite things about Thriller was in the opening of Thriller, they had Michael Jackson was the like Letterman, and he was walking with his girlfriend who had her, she had a little ponytail, and
in the 50s. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, like first of all, she had the best outfits. Okay.
Yeah.
Best looks, like that actress. Oh my gosh, she looks like her. Even the 80s when they cut to 1984, those pumps and the hair and the jacket and the pants.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she looked great. But it's in the 50s, and he has a Letterman jacket, and he turns into a werewolf. And then it cuts to 84, and then he's like, oh, psyching her out, and they passed a graveyard, and the zombies come, and in this they have a werewolf, they have the zombies, they have vampires, they have an extra monster that was not in Thriller, but because Thriller was it was an obviously iconic historic music video, but they took, like, the person who did the makeup for Thriller did the makeup for this film, and you can see that in the zombies because they have excellent detail,
they really do.
The makeup is superb, and also I thought one thing they did in this, and I haven't seen this in other zombie movies, is they show the crypt, like they show the zombies from the point of view, like they put the camera inside the coffin as they're scratching out. I thought that was really cool.
And the makeup holds up to that kind of that close up, and so I watched at a certain point. I stopped the movie and I went and watched the Thriller music video, and Vincent Price's rap, it starts out, darkness falls across the land, the midnight hour is close at hand. And I was like, oh, there it is. Shit, that's where they got it. And then of course the Get Dead like musical number is totally them doing like their own Thriller moment.
Oh yeah. Thriller was huge. I mean, I never got over it. Like, it was so awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I mean, are you kidding me?
Nobody's ever gotten over it. That's
I don't want to. I love that album.
Yeah. It's like
here, wait. I even have my little, like, because if you see Thriller, like when you open it up, there's a lion.
Yes.
This is my Thriller lion.
Yes. Oh.
Because I don't have MJ money, but I got a stuffed one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's better. I think that's better than having having a full-sized.
Okay, let's go back.
Um, but
Sorry.
but yeah, it's funny that, if you wouldn't think, you would think that if somebody was given the direction of like just do thriller but like as a movie, that then it wouldn't be as good. But it's somehow like the writer and the director, who went on to direct like episodes of The Sopranos and Lost and like Game of Thrones, and is now like a big deal TV director. Just somehow the talent coming into it made it better than just like like a TV movie rip off of Thriller or something. It became more than that.
Oh yeah. No, that's even so I remembered watching it several times like and crying every time I saw it. And TV movies really didn't have that effect on me to make me cry. Like they were engrossing and interesting and fascinating, like and accessible and all those things. But this is the first one to ever make me cry, and to always like it, to always latch onto it. And one thing I really like about TV movies that is you get to decide whether or not you like it, because it's almost like the Shawshank Redemption. Like the Shawshank Redemption did not do well at the box office at all. And how people discovered it was that it was on TBS and it would just play all the time. And that's
Yeah.
how I saw it. And I never saw it from beginning to end straight through. I always would see the beginning, and then I'd see the middle, I'd see the end at different times because it would play nonstop. And that's how I discovered the Shawshank Redemption. And then I was like, this movie is amazing. And that's how everyone discovered it, literally for themselves. They discovered it that way. And it was like this group collective. I remember meeting people like, oh, have you seen that? Oh, yeah. And like it became this huge thing that it is now. Like everybody has seen the Shawshank Redemption, or most people have.
Yeah.
But that's what I liked about this movie. It was something that I never knew that, because I thought Lee Montgomery from Girls Just Want to Have Fun was so cute. I mean, I always had a crush on
he
him.
is.
And seeing him in this, I was like, what? He was in this? Oh my gosh. And I had no idea. And I was able to come to, it was like a secret. It was like, oh, this is my secret film. And it felt so destined for me to see it when I saw it. Like it felt special. Like universe carved out some space for me and was like, oh, you need to see this. And like it was like the best time. It was like I was supposed to stay home from school that day, not go, because I always felt guilty that I didn't go to school even though I didn't want to go. And this was like, no, I felt no guilt. I felt like the universe was like, no guilt for you today, young Katie. You were supposed to see this movie. And I would
That's great.
and I kept singing, Baby, I'm Yours. And I would walk around my house singing it. And I just, hope one day I was going to be in love with somebody like Lee Montgomery, and he would like history and nerdy stuff just as me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, one thing that I noticed, in saying that the talent that was involved in this, the cinematography in this is really good, and
It's wonderful.
And I there's the rising from the grave shots, but then there's just all of these moments that really feel like choices, like when the judge is killed by the Vernon whatever.
Vernon Nestor.
Vernon Nestor. Then the camera pans out and it doesn't follow the zombie who killed him, but it looks in through the window at his wife, who is like still knitting and completely unaware of what happened. And then it holds on her for a minute. Or like there's these there's like during the party, they have these long tracking shots that are like more than a minute long.
Yeah.
Like I noticed where they're following a person through the party and then they're going up the stairs and then they stop and then they follow another character and without cutting and it, you know, it sort of swoops around and it just keeps moving. And I was like, this is really like, this is not, you don't usually see camera work like that in a TV movie. This feels very cinematic. It's not just like shot, reaction shot, reaction shot, establishing shot, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's one of the things I really loved about the build up to the cellar. Like you talked about the cellar scene to the Smith songs, like where where
Yes.
Lucinda attacks I forget her name, Michelle.
Melissa.
Melissa attacks Melissa. There's a build up because she follows her around, and they built up to that moment where she goes into the cellar with her. And one of the scenes that I thought they did a good job is, you know, Melissa's upstairs with Mary, Deedee Pfeiffer, and they're doing makeup, and Lucinda's just staring at her. And the way that the camera is telling us that story, like, it's obvious, like, to us, like, watch out, this girl, you know, this Lucinda's gonna get you, you know, obviously, like she's hunting her. And they staged it really well with the camera work because they showed the obliviousness to the characters through the camera, without making it cheesy, without making it corny. And it led to the wonderful scene that's actually horrifying. It scared my mom when I watched it with my mom.
Yeah.
It has that, you know, it kind of feels like The Hunger with
yeah, because it's in slow-mo and it's done in this way that's, you know, where it's just like the blood is spurting
and it's playing the Smiths, which
but
was
it's not
very,
blood, it's
at that
red wine.
time in a goth, it would be like playing at, like, you know, industrial alternative night.
Yeah, just having the Smiths in a TV movie, I was like, damn, you know. And How Soon Is Now, which ended up being like the theme to Charmed, you know. So it's like there's something supernatural about that song apparently. So I wanted to go just quickly, you know, through the different performances and, like, you know, just what are I mean, yeah, Lee Montgomery, we kind of covered that. Like, I think that he was very good. Like, he had you know, sometimes if you get like a hunky Hollywood guy to play someone who's a little awkward, then you're like, you know, you don't buy it. But I totally bought that he was, you know, his sort of nervousness and anxiousness. And that was built into a whole kind of character arc for him where, like, at the end, that's another one of those great little details. At the end, when he hears "Baby, I'm Yours," then he puts his top down on his convertible, which is like something that she wanted him to do, but also it's like a sign that he's becoming less of that like nervous person and that he's learning to like relax and enjoy himself more, and that he's like come out of this experience changed in some way. But yeah, I thought he was really good, and I thought Jonna Lee was probably like I think she gave the best performance in this whole thing, because she wasn't being naturalistic. It was like a little exaggerated, a little cartoonish, a little bit big, but to be clear that there's something a little bit like off about her. But then she also has these other aspects, like she's got sort of like a wild side where she likes like fast cars and, you know, and there's, and then she transitions into, you know, into serious moments really well without losing like the continuity of her character. It seemed like an interesting little balancing act, because she could have really come off as like totally cartoonish and just like in a different movie than everybody else, but somehow like it all
Yeah.
kind of blended together.
Yeah. Cuz she had to, she had to say, Peachy King and things like that,
Yeah,
outdated.
Ginchi.
Yeah. Yeah, that without sounding fake. Without sounding corny. She did sell it. And one of the things I really like is when she's looking for her house and she doesn't understand anything, and Lee Montgomery pulls up and they're talking, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And that those were the tonal moments I really appreciated, because, like I said, I related to her feeling out of place and isolated and sincere and earnest.
Yeah.
I feel like her performance was very, very earnest.
Yeah, it was. It was. She was really, uh she was giving us a real performance.
So we have the similar notes about like certain things like uh drag racing and the movie theater. Like she wants to go and go. She wants to go to the malt shop, right? And Phil takes her to the movie theater, or he takes her
Hmm.
where the malt shop was, but now it's a movie theater, right?
Um, yes, yes, it
Yeah.
was where the malt shop was, but now it's a like a multiplex movie theater.
So this is interesting to me. Okay, so okay, so he's talking her through the changes from the late 50s, early 60s to the 80s, right? So if we were to redo this and have it take place in the 80s, like have someone from the 80s come to now, they'd want to go to the mall. They'd want to
Yeah,
go, and I think that's interesting because so many of the malls they would have gone to are gone,
yeah,
are now a dead malls, vacant, or they're just been bulldozed. And like, for instance, Scottsdale Mall in South Bend, which was a great mall, the best malls, beautiful. It was so beautiful. It was like a meditation space. Like you could go in there and they had fountains everywhere. It was like it had like these really pretty like Japanese garden stuff inside. It was gorgeous. And if someone was like, "Oh, I really want to go there," I remember someone even got married inside that mall. Um, it wouldn't be there. Instead, what they replaced it with was a bunch of box stores that are empty now. So it's a bunch of vacant strip mall stores, and that's so sad. Because like if you were in the 80s, you'd like, oh, let's go to the record store. You can't go now, or it'd
yeah.
be like, let's go to this movie theater over here. Movie theaters are even shutting down. So they would be very confused by everything we do today. Like we don't talk face to face. They would be shocked to see how big bodies are. That is one thing I definitely noticed when I watch 80s movies to now. I even remember like there was no size past 10. Like, like they
Yeah.
did not make clothes for bigger people. And yeah, so many things would be very confusing for people that would come, and be Sandy.
Well, there is that element to nostalgia, I guess, where there's uh, there's a kind of it's a bittersweet emotion. It's like a longing for the past. I was doing research and I nostalgia. It's these two Greek words. What is it? Nostos, which means to return or like a homecoming, and then algos, which means sorrow or despair.
Mm.
And originally, it meant more like homesickness, like just being homesick, and then eventually it came to be this kind of like complex emotion where you're recalling this happy time, but then it's also mixed with the awareness that that time has passed. Um, but it's so it's got you can in this movie like you can enjoy the 60s touches, but then there's also this feeling of like this time has passed, and there's a little bit of sadness about that, which that's really part of the whole nostalgia experience. Another thing, I was doing research about nostalgia, and it says that it has, I guess there have been studies, and nostalgia has a kind of psychologically protective effect. We tend to be more nostalgic during periods of great change or stress or loneliness in our lives, and nostalgia has a tendency to like cheer us up and also help with like existential crises, fears of death, things like that. Just like feelings of like, what's my purpose? Who am I?
Oh, wow.
Because it kind of creates this feeling of connection between the past and the present, where you're like, oh, that's who I am. This thing, this is who I am, and it helps you kind of feel rooted in your past while being in your present. I think that, especially because of COVID, which was this very stressful, isolating experience, and then also just like technology and modern living, nostalgia has taken up a really large part of the media that we consume, and it's this way to kind of cope with that loneliness. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And like during COVID, when there was lockdown, I remember everybody went straight to nostalgia, like deep, deep, deep nostalgia, like everything that you loved as a kid. And
Well, I mean, I watched Who's the Boss episodes, reruns, Give Me a Break reruns. I watched that. Yeah, 227
yeah,
on the Antenna channel.
me too. It was everything with me.
Yeah. I didn't
I
want
was
to watch
watching,
anything
like,
sad. I didn't want to watch anything about like I still don't want to. I want everything to be Xanadu and sparkly and nice. I don't need to know. I don't want to watch true crime. I don't want to know. I know how horrible people are.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I was saying like before that I think we tend to be more nostalgic about movies where we're like, oh, I want to be in there, but and then also I think we're more nostalgic about movies that have that provoke strong emotions in us, like sentimental feelings. Nostalgia is a sentimental feeling, and movies that give you like the warm fuzzies, movies that give you those sentimental feelings, like that's why way more people are nostalgic about like John Hughes movies than they are about like Porky's,
Yes.
because the John Hughes movies connected with you on a real emotional level, and that just kind of gets its hooks into your heart. And I think that the really, really nostalgic movies have an elements of like romance or sadness to them, like somewhere in there, and then that makes that thing hit even more. Like if you show me like if you play me a sad song, then I'll say, oh, that's a sad song. But then if you show me the Muppet movie and I see like Gonzo singing like I'm going to go back there someday, his like sad song about how he wants to go back to the sky, I will weep like a little baby whose doll has been taken away, And there's just something about that hits me stronger than other stuff does. And I think it's because it's a great movie, but also it's like that. It's that nostalgia, that the emotion of that. It got its hooks into me early, and now it's just like it's in there.
Well, like the Midnight Hour.
Yeah,
It got
exactly.
its hooks
Like
in
the
me when I
Midnight
was
Hour.
like, 11, 12, going through a hard time in my life, longing for someone to connect with. And I think that's the reason why I loved Sandy, and I still relate to her, is like I remember being this very lonely, isolated kid who had, who was surrounded by people pretending to be like more sexual than they should be, more hard than they should be, and not wanting that so much, wanting more of just what they had in the movie, which was just like deep talks.
Yeah.
Deep talks and understanding, and a strong connection that went past the mortal world.
Yes. Yes. That was, it really got me. And one thing that I was thinking about was, how could this movie be making me feel so nostalgic when I did not see it as a child? But I think this is one that's like hitting on multiple levels. Like it's got nostalgia built into the plot of it, built in with Sandy. It's giving you thriller. It's giving you American Graffiti. It's giving you all of these things.
It's giving you Star Trek.
It's
too.
Yeah. It's giving
LeVar.
you. Oh yeah. LeVar Burton, of course.
I mean, he's an icon, so
He's an icon, and it was so funny to see him being like a horny teenager because he's so. Because he's so like, in Reading Rainbow and in Star Trek, he's so just sort of like honorable and sweet and wonderful and just like, and just to see him, I was like, I know he was supposed to be like a little too much, but I was like, LeVar is kind of hot. Like he's cute. But
I can't look at him like that. He taught me how to read.
yeah, no, I know. I think ultimately, like apart from our own experience of a film or our own history of a film or its callbacks to this or to that, I think that movies that just make a specific time and place seem like fun and exciting and simpler and friendlier and make us want to be there, those can make you nostalgic for almost anything. It can make you nostalgic watching the Donna Reed show. I can watch Meet Me in St. Louis with Judy Garland and be like, oh, I wish I was in the 1900s, because it feels so like idyllic the way that they present it. I watched The Godfather, and The Godfather made me be like, oh, I wish I was in Italy. And I've never been to Italy, but I was just like, oh, it's so beautiful there. And so I think that it's just, if a movie has that glow to it, that same sort of glow that our sense of nostalgia imparts on something, then it will make you feel nostalgic. And movies can just have that as like just a quality about them. And it's not necessarily, you can calculate it and you can calculate this reference and that reference, but you can't calculate the glow. The glow has to come organically.
Yeah.
And that this movie has the glow.
It does. I love this movie.
Do you want to do the dialogue scene?
Yeah.
Okay. So every episode, in honor of Molly Shannon's great character, Mary Catherine Gallagher, her superstar character from SNL, who is obsessed with TV movies, and she's always like, my feelings would be best expressed in this monologue from a portrait of a stripper. And so each episode we pick a monologue. However, all of the monologues in this were like, we have to get to the graveyard by midnight or else it is like very horror exposition sort of stuff. So I thought there's the scene where Sandy is like, I want to go to the malt shop and get a chocolate soda. And he's like, malt shop? And she's like, come on, take me there. And you, okay. And they go, and then they see that it's a movie theater now, and they're walking by the movie theater. So I thought we could do a little scene instead.
Yes.
Okay. You all ready?
Yes.
Okay. You're Sandy and I'm Phil.
Finally, I get to be Sandy. Okay. Who'd believe it? 5 movie theaters crammed into what used to be the malt shop. How do you keep from hearing one movie through the walls of the one next door?
You don't.
And the drive-in's closed?
Yeah, except for swap meets. How long ago did you say you lived here before you moved back? Because I don't remember there being a malt shop here.
Well, it was a long time ago.
I don't remember any of those things from when I was a kid. You know, like the crazy things that your parents tell you that you did. You know, like running down the street naked during a hurricane.
Did you do that?
They tell me I did.
I remember lots of things.
And then she picks up 2 newspapers and uses them like pom-poms.
We got the team on the beams. No doubt about it. We're going to... Who's... What?
We're gonna shout it.
We're gonna shout it. Come on, Phil. Who's gonna win?
Pitchford?
You can do better than that.
Pitchford.
Louder.
Pitchford!
Go, team, go.
Aw.
Yay.
There. You got your
that's one of the
moment
things
to be Sandy.
even when I was watching it, I was like, oh, she has magical powers, because I remember she picks up the newspapers. I was like, why is she picking up the newspaper? And then I said they turned into pom-poms.
But they're like newspaper pom-poms. But they're all shredded like pom-poms.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it was.
It's really cool. But I was like, oh. And then they kind of hint at it during the drag race scene, because she's like, do it. Like when this little Camaro wants to race his, you know, he has this really awesome, like, piece of junk car, which happens to be a classic car, like a convertible, amazing car. And these guys in like totally Risky Business style. It was like straight up out of Risky Business. Like when they try to, you know, Tom Cruise is like, they're like, you taking your daddy's Porsche out, you know, like that scene where they race, and she's like, do it, Phil, you can do it. And she's like, go. Like, they hint at the magic powers.
Yeah. And then, you know, and then you see it that she's the one. It's like they thought that they needed this guy's bones to make it work, but it was her magic power of, you know, the power of love that made it.
I am not cynical. I believe in the power of love.
Mm-hmm. I know. I believe in the power of love.
I do.
I do too. God help me. And I, you know, I cried at the end of this. So yeah, I would say, you know, if you're looking for something cute for Halloween, and I mean, what's more nostalgic than a holiday, honestly, you know, especially Halloween and Christmas, then this is a really fun little movie. And it might, you know, it might really resonate and become like a little Halloween tradition. Like it seems to be for so many people, because all over on IMDb and everywhere, everybody's like, I watched this as a kid and now I watch it every Halloween and I show it to my kids. And there was one where he was saying that his little girl loves it and she wanted to dress up like Sandy for Halloween. And this was like, you know, like 5 years ago or something. So, you know, it's maybe not as well known as some other cult classics, but it's got a devoted little following that loves it.
Good, because it deserves it. And that's why we do this podcast, is to give things that deserve love.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Or some of them are just so weird that we have to.
Yeah, or
we don't want them to fade away. We're like, wait, have you ever seen Tarzan in Manhattan?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if that deserves love, but it definitely deserves something. It deserves attention.
I mean, Juan Lipschitz.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So this is Mother Murder Podcaster. Be sure to rate us and tell us what you think. Rate, review us on Apple Podcast or Spotify. And if you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel.
Yes. And if you want to follow us and other content, then we've got an Instagram and a TikTok, both of which are at Mother Murderer Podcaster, where we'll put like clips from the movies that we can't put in here because there'll be a rights violation. But if we put them on there, it's okay. Yeah, follow all of that, and then join us for our next episode.
And which we will be covering the TV movie Blonde.
Yes, it was a TV movie before it was a Netflix movie. All right.
Okay.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.